Alrighty, welcome in everyone to just another edition of Just Another College Football Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tommy Brzee. It is Monday, November 24th around here, and we got a lot to get to. We had some massive games from this past weekend, a little bit lighter of a weekend, obviously, with that SEC exhibition weekend, if you want to call it that we had this past weekend. We got a couple of big games we want to talk about to start things off, and then we just got to whip around. We'll talk about Notre Dame just doing despicable things to Syracuse. We'll talk about Utah escaping with their CFP lives, a couple other massive games that we got to talk about, and then we'll do a little bit of a wrap-up. We got to talk about coaching carousel. We got to talk about Mike Norvell staying at Florida State. Penn State getting a little bit closer to a decision, but a lot of discord among the fan base of what that decision should be. Lane Kiffin update. Auburn seems like they have their guy. They're just waiting on that moment. And we have a new opening. Cal has fired Justin Wilcox. We'll get to all of that at the very end. For right now, we got to talk about the big games from this past weekend. To my count, we had 4 massive games for this past weekend that totally changed the way the CFP is going to be rolled out. And we'll start up there in Eugene, Oregon. Oregon gets a win 42-27. Apologies for that. 42-27 there instead of 37 for USC. But this Oregon team is really impressive. And they're a team this is a game on paper. It looks like a shootout. It looks like a game where they had to score 42 points to win it. And part of that is true. But they won this game running the football. They won this game winning the line of scrimmage the way that they really have the entirety of the season. The crazy part about it is the Oregon offensive line was banged up coming into this game. Isaiah World did not play. Alex Harkey left, I believe, early in this game, and they had a couple other injuries as well at those tackle positions and other positions on that offensive line, not to mention Evan Stewart not playing, which has been the case for a long time, so not really a huge thing there, but Decoria Moore didn't play. Gary Bright Jr. didn't play. That's your top 3 wide receivers, period, end of story, and you had a couple other guys that did not play in this football game. Oregon was down to the studs in a lot of different ways, especially on that offensive line, and they still won the battle up front by a pretty decided margin. They ran the ball much more effectively, 179 yards on the ground for Oregon, 52 for USC on 28 carries. That's the difference in this football game. When Noah Whittington is running the football like that, when Jordan Davison is being a part of the group the way that he was in this football game, it's going to be really hard to stop this group. Not to mention you have Dante Moore. If I was the GM of any NFL team right now and I had the number 1 overall pick in the 2026 draft, if Dante Moore is on that board, I'm taking Dante Moore. He is so uniquely impressive. His ability to manage a pocket, his ability to make throws that not a lot of guys are confidently making, and he makes them consistently. The seam shot to Kenyon Sadiq for a touchdown. Ridiculous. Truly a ridiculous throw that so many different quarterbacks in the college football realm just put in their pocket and decide to save for another down, don't have the confidence to throw that ball in, definitely don't have the accuracy to throw that football. Dante Moore is so calm, so cool, so collected. He struggled against Indiana. There's no doubt about that, and he's going to have bigger challenges down the road, and we'll see how he reacts. The kid is uniquely talented and has all of the tools you could possibly want for a quarterback. If he comes back in 2026, then he's going to be right up there for the 2027 draft. But at the end of the day, this kid looks NFL ready to me. He put on a show on Saturday, and it was an incredible thing to watch. We'll talk about USC probably after the season. I want to do a segment just talking about teams that played probably better football than they're going to get credit for this year. USC would fall into that group for me. I think a lot of people have their problems with Lincoln Riley, some well-founded, some not as well-founded. He's turned a lot of keys at this program that I thought were just kind of past being turned in a certain sense. I thought he was well down the road of just not ever having an elite defense at USC, not ever being a team that can impose their will, and they still have work to do. This was never going to be a one-year thing. This was always going to be 2 or 3 years before they really become the team that they want to be. They are tougher this year. They are better on both lines of scrimmage. They're not Oregon elite, and I think that's the difference that you found out on Saturday. And that's okay. It's not ideal. Obviously, USC wants to compete with Oregon. They want to compete for Big Ten championships and national championships. But it's still a uniquely talented team, and they are turning the right keys. They are flipping the right switches. Can they continue that into 2026 will be a big question because Mekhi Lemon, likely off to the NFL, had 3 touchdowns, including a passing touchdown in this football game, has kind of a cannon on him. Jacoby Lane went for over 100 yards. He's likely off to the NFL. Tanook Hines goes for 141. He will likely be back in LA next year. An incredible football player and will likely be the leader for this wide receiver group going into next year. We have time to talk about USC. I've been really impressed with what Lincoln Riley has been able to do. It's not about necessarily the record that they have or the teams that they've lost to or the teams that they've beat. The way that they're playing football is so much tougher, has more of an edge, and they're much better on both lines of scrimmage than they were even a year ago, and definitely feel that they will be better even next year with Jakeem Stewart and those younger players getting a little bit more run and getting more comfortable. We'll talk about USC, plenty of time to get into them. This likely does take them out of the playoff picture. I think Oregon is as dangerous as anyone when we talk about the playoff because they're getting healthy. We talked about that offensive line. That is something that has been there for the vast majority of the year. They will get back to that elite level that they had early in the year on that offensive line. Getting Evan Stewart back is massive. That is one of the better wide receivers in the entire country. Coming into this year, he gets hurt in fall camp, and they're able to make it work just enough offensively. If that guy gets back into the mix before the playoff, that's terrifying. It's truly terrifying what Will Stein and that offense is going to be capable of doing, including the three incredible running backs that they have, including Kenyon Sadiq, including DK Moore, who will be healthy at that point. You got to get through the Washington game. I've talked about this a number of times. A 10-2 Oregon, I think you're in. I can't promise that. So let's go ahead and take care of Washington, move on to maybe the Big Ten Championship, probably just off to the playoff, and then we'll see what happens. It's a dangerous team that's getting healthy at the right time, and Evan Stewart's one of those wide receivers that I think a lot of people are going to remember just how good he is when he gets back on the football field. Oklahoma gets a Oklahoma-type win, 17-6 over Missouri. They know exactly who they are, and it's a very valuable thing in this era of college football where so many things are changing. Things changed about this football team throughout this year for Oklahoma, but they know exactly who they are. They're a suffocating defense and an offense that has to make one or two big plays per game and try to possess the ball as much as you possibly can. That's the goal at the end of the day. I like John Mateer. I think he's a good football player. I think if he comes back for 2026 and they do more around him, they can be a ridiculously good offense. I really do believe that. He is missing things that are going to hurt him in a college football playoff setting. Now, hits Isaiah Satania for the massive play. That was more than half of his passing yards on the day. So he's got to figure something out. In some of these bigger games, he's going to have to make these big throws. He's going to have to get his eyes into better positions because there are open receivers. He's either missing them with his eyes or he's missing them with his arm. Very talented kid, though. Absolutely someone that can make those big plays. And when you have a defense like that, you can do a lot of things wrong and still be able to win a football game by 11 points, which is exactly what happened in this game. This game really just felt like Missouri kept having chances at it, kept having chances to at least make it close. I don't know if they were going to win this football game. They were down by 11 for the vast majority of it, but a couple of big plays that they hurt themselves with penalties or the drop from Kevin Coleman in the end zone late in that football game, just little margins. That's all that Oklahoma needs to win these games because the defense is so talented, because the defense makes incredible adjustments, and that was very, very evident early on in this game. I believe in the first 7 carries for Ahmad Hardy, he had 42 yards. He finished with just over 50 on 17 carries. They totally shut him down, and they said, we're not worried about the deep passing game with an injured quarterback coming back. We're going to fly downhill. And Owen Heineke and company, those linebackers, made every single play in the world. I was very worried early in that game because it looked like the wide zone was hurting them, and no R. Mason Thomas was making a big difference in that football game. Then the big adjustment from the linebackers, they fly downhill, and they totally shut him down for the rest of the game. And now you're not far from the CFP berth. After that Texas Ole Miss loss, I think everyone, including myself, would have bet against you to make the CFP. You found your way there. It's not a perfect team. It is a defense that can stop just about any offense in the country, and that gives you a shot. And it's an offense that is just explosive enough, makes just enough big plays. Isaiah Satania could return a kick in a playoff game. He could make a massive 87-yard touchdown in a playoff game. That's all they need. They need 1 or 2 of those big-time plays. They need to keep the ball for, let's say, over 27, 28 minutes per game just to make it relatively even on the time of possession and not put your defense on the field time and again. You're doing enough. It's LSU at home this weekend. You should be able to win that football game. LSU won by 3 points against Western Kentucky this past weekend. If you can't win that game, then you probably earned your way out of the CFP. But as of right now, they're dangerous as can be. They have a defense that can win them a national title if that offense can elevate at the right time. For Missouri, This feels like a special season that missed by inches. And that Vanderbilt game was really the start of it, but this one falls a little bit short as well. Just one of those things. We talked about it going into the season. A lot of teams in the SEC were going to get got. Missouri is one of those teams. But Oklahoma continues on. Just got to get a win this Saturday against LSU, and you're in the playoff, likely going on the road. I don't know. A lot of things could happen over the next little bit. Regardless of what happens, it's a dangerous team, and one that its defense can get them a really long way in this tournament. BYU gets a 26-14 win over Cincinnati. BYU is just a really good football team. We can try to reason with it as much as we want to. We can say they're not interesting enough, whatever. They play really, really good football. And like Oklahoma, they know exactly who they are. It's a little bit different than what Oklahoma is, but they are a down and dirty football team. They will drag you into the mud and keep you there. They're going to possess the ball 38 plus minutes in this football game. They had the football. It's just a really, really tough team to beat. They are going to give you body blow after body blow, and then at a certain point, you are going to quit. Mainly because LJ Martin's a nightmare. The kid is absolutely freakish. Went for 222 yards, a career high in this football game. Sits at 225. I don't think he's 225. He reminds me a lot of Tyler Algier, where they say 225 on the roster. His legs might be 225. He is an absolute nightmare to tackle. The dude is such a tough physical player, and he fits exactly what that football team is. I think if you're asking what the BYU Cougars are, you just show them LJ Martin tape, and you say that's what they are. They're going to run in between the tackles, they're going to batter you over 4 quarters, and they're going to find a way to win the football game at the end of the day. On the other side, the Cincinnati run game had absolutely nothing. The duo of Evan Pryor and Tyree Walker went for 12 carries, 47 yards. Obviously, being down in this game didn't help that, but they still didn't get nearly enough from that duo on the ground. And now you get to the playoff conversation with BYU. I don't know what to think. I really don't. It's very, very hard for me to know what the committee will do, what I will think after the Big 12 championship game. Obviously, they got something to handle. They got UCF this weekend. If they win that one, they're very likely to get a rematch with Texas Tech. What does an 11-2 BYU look like on Selection Sunday? If they beat Texas Tech, this is a moot point. Both teams are going to the playoff. I have very little doubt in that. If they lose, and say they lose by 14, what is the conversation? Because we've talked about this before. I know what Texas Tech is. I know they're a top 12 team in the country. Do I know that there's 14 points in between them and the hypothetical 12th best team in the country? That's tough to reason with. It's going to be interesting to watch. They still have to play UCF this weekend, and then very likely Texas Tech and Arlington at the end of it all. It's going to be a fascinating conversation. There's no doubt about that. Cincinnati is another team that I'll talk about at the end of the season, much like I'll talk about USC. It was a good year, but you start 8-0 and you have a lot of different thoughts about what the season could be, and now you're staring down a trip to Fort Worth just trying to get to 9 wins. Just a really tough finish for a really fun team in 2025, and for BYU, everything's still on the table. I wouldn't worry about the 11-2 scenario because none of that's happened yet. You got to beat UCF, you got to handle Texas Tech. If you do both those things, you're in the CFP without question. If you lose to Texas Tech, I'll probably be fighting for you on Selection Sunday. Will it get through is a big-time question mark, and I'm not sure if it will. We'll deal with that when it comes to it. Obviously, there will be plenty of debate when we get to that moment, but an 11-2 BYU might be the biggest wrinkle in this year's playoff. And then Georgia Tech just gets rolled in a lot of ways by Pitt 42-28. This is not what I expected. And not necessarily that I didn't expect Pitt to win. Well, I didn't pick them to win, so I didn't expect Pitt to win. But not necessarily to say I didn't think Pitt had the capability of winning. This is not the way I saw it going down. Georgia Tech played a terrible opening quarter, went down 28-0. Pitt was firing on all cylinders. The Georgia Tech defense looked all out of sorts. And then they kind of found something. Late in the first half, they scored 2 touchdowns. They get back within 14 points early in the third quarter. They get a stop. They're driving down. And then Haynes King throws the pick six. The 100-yard pick six by Lovelace goes all the way back down the other way. Instead of cutting it to 7 points, it's a 21-point lead again, and that was pretty much the end of the day. Ja'Kyrian Turner was incredible in this football game. Desmond Reed doesn't play, and you're thinking, Pitt's missing their best playmaker. Georgia Tech's offense has always been able to produce. Are they going to be able to keep up? Pitt was able to keep up. This was the best football player on the field on Saturday, and it was incredible to watch this guy go to work. Remarkable breakout speed when he gets into open space. Really good blocking up front from Pitt, but when that guy finds a crease, he is out the door. There's no doubt about that. An incredible game by him, and he keeps Pitt firmly in the ACC conversation. It knocks Georgia Tech fully out of it, and I think you're going to look back on that game going up to NC State and think, that's just one you have to be able to win. And I think they understand that. Brent Key was none too happy after the game on this one, and he missed a massive shot. You missed a chance in an open ACC to go win it, go to the CFP, and start building going into next year. Again, still a very, very good season. For a team that, if I told you 9-3 coming into the year, I think about 99% of Georgia Tech fans would say that's more than fine. The way it happened isn't ideal. You get out to, I believe, a 7-0 start. You lose to NC State, and then you just got to hope you find a way to pull a massive upset this upcoming weekend against Georgia. You're probably going to end 9-3. That Georgia offense is rolling right now, and based on what we saw on Saturday, there's no reason for me to believe that Georgia Tech is going to be able to slow them down. There's still a world where they get to the ACC championship. A whole lot of things have to happen for that to happen, but we could get a rematch of these two teams if a lot of things break the right way for Georgia Tech. But probably knocks you out of the ACC championship. A tough finish to a season that just felt like it was rolling for Georgia Tech just about a month ago. Has kind of fallen apart for Pitt. You're right in the mix. You do need a little bit of help. You need Virginia Tech to get a win over UVA. You need, I believe, Wake Forest is playing SMU. I could be mistaken there. SMU's got to fall, or Virginia's got to fall. If that's the case, then you will see the Pitt Panthers in the ACC championship if they can handle Miami. They probably have the toughest challenge of the ACC teams in the final week of the season. They get a Miami team that has to win to stay in the CFP race, and we'll talk about them here in a second. I don't know how you keep a 10-2 Miami out. And again, we will talk about more of this as the week goes on. But a huge win for Pitt here keeps them in the ACC championship conversation. Likely knocks Tech fully out of the conversation after an incredible start for the Yellow Jackets. Now you got to go play one of the best teams in the country, and we'll see how that goes. Both these teams have to go play some of the best teams in the country. We'll see how that unfolds. But all these games had massive implications. You have an Oregon team that essentially locks up their trip to the CFP. I guess a loss to Washington can make things sketchy, but tend to believe they're going to win that football game and they'll move on forward to the CFP. Pretty much locks Oklahoma in as long as they can beat a really down LSU team. BYU's in a weird spot as they move down the stretch in. Pitt was able to stay in the thing, and Georgia Tech missed a golden opportunity to go to the ACC championship and be waiting on a team they'd probably be favored over. But at the end of the day, that's the way the cookie crumbles. Now we got to move forward. We got just a Week 13 whip around. Not as many games to talk about as we talked about earlier. We got to talk about Notre Dame just dismantling Syracuse. We got to talk about Utah escaping with their CFP lives. Miami handling business. Vanderbilt. A little bit of history for Arch Manning over there in Austin. A number of things we got to talk about right after this break, so stick with us. Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the big games from this past weekend. Oregon gets I don't want to say dominating, but comfortable win over USC. Oklahoma handles Missouri, if for a lack of a better term. BYU handles Cincinnati, and Pitt kind of puts it on. Georgia Tech in Atlanta knocks them out of the ACC championship and puts the Panthers at least in the conversation going into that final week of a chaotic ACC that we will get to on Wednesday, I promise you that. But we got to talk about a number of other games that happened this past weekend. A little bit of a whip around too. I got 9 different games here and then just kind of a scoreboard I want to go over real quickly with you guys. But let's go and jump into this, and let's start with whatever that was up there in South Bend. Notre Dame 70, Syracuse 7. This was abusive in a lot of different ways, and Notre Dame was up 21-0 before the offense ever stepped foot on the football field. As crazy as that sounds, that was the case. And it wasn't even like they were trying to put up 70. It wasn't like they went out there and said, we have to put up as many points as possible because the committee is watching. We have to prove a point. There was just open grass everywhere. Syracuse kept insisting on them running all the way down the football field for touchdowns. and they obliged. And Jeremiah Love, that's the best player in the sport. There's a lot of different great players in this sport. There's no doubt about it. That is the best player. I feel very confident saying that. He had 8 carries, 171 yards, and 3 scores in this game. I get it, Syracuse. Those aren't numbers that should exist ever in any reality. So he's absurd. He should be the Heisman winner. He would be mine right now. I get it. The schedule is not incredible. I also get that the Big Ten title game might keep him from winning it. I think that's the best player in the country, at least that is in Heisman contention. I think Caleb Downs is the best player in the country, but that's a totally different conversation, maybe for the offseason when we get closer to the draft. But at the end of the day, Jeremiah Love's had an incredible season. He'd be my Heisman winner. If I was giving it out today, good thing for me, I'm not. So we got plenty of football to be played, plenty of really, really good candidates, but Notre Dame just abuses Syracuse for 4 quarters and then sends them on their way, and now they just got Stanford in between them and a CFP berth. Utah escaped this one. This is probably the weirdest game of the weekend. 51-47, Utah escapes Kansas State. Kansas State's up 12 with about 7 minutes left. And then Teo Johnson returns a 2-point conversion, cuts the game to 10. Utah scores twice in the final 3 minutes, and the game's over. And that was it. Utah totally took over this game late in this one, and that Teo Johnson play might end up being one of the most important, I don't want to say in Utah history, but if they go to the playoff, it's a massive, massive play for that football team moving forward. On the other side, really quickly, Joe Jackson was incredible in this football game. 293 yards rushing for that guy, 3 touchdowns, 472 on the ground for Kansas State in this game. Utah's got a problem with the run game, and they got a Kansas team that is more than happy to keep it on the ground with Jalen Daniels and company. It's going to be tough. But at the end of the day, they win this one, go for 292 on the ground themselves, so there's a lot of ground play on this in this game. They're in a weird spot for the playoff, is Utah, and we'll talk about it more on Wednesday when we get into all of these realities and all of these scenarios. They're sitting at 12. I don't see a comfortable path for them other than abject chaos on both sides of them. I don't think it even has to happen only in front of them. I think it's got to happen behind them a little bit too, because I think a 10-2 Miami would be very ripe to jump them. They might jump them tomorrow, depending on what the rankings look like. It's going to be really weird. They got to handle Kansas for now to finish off the season, but just a weird vibe around a number 12 team in the country that I think is pretty firmly on the outside of the CFP looking in. I don't know what will happen. If they beat Kansas, then everything's up in the air at the end of the day. Maybe they get a little bit of help and make it into the Big 12 championship. I don't know. But at the end of the day, just a really weird spot for Utah to be in going into the final week. For Kansas State, I think making a bowl game after the abject disaster this season was to start is probably a win. So we'll see what happens there. But Utah keeps their CFP hopes alive. I don't know what they look like in a lot of ways. We'll talk about it on Wednesday, but just a really weird spot for the Utes to be in right now. The team right behind them that we just talked about, Miami continues to get the message. They got the message that they need to handle their business, and they kind of need to look pretty good doing it. If they're going to find a way into the CFP, well, winning a game pretty comfortably against Virginia Tech is going to do that. Carson Beck looked incredible in this football game. Malachi Toney is a freak. We all know he was a freak, but at the end of the day, he continues to prove he's one of the very best wide receivers in the country, and he's 18 years old. So we'll see what he does in the rest of his career, but an incredible, incredible football player. Massive trip to Pitt this weekend. We'll talk about it more tomorrow. We'll do a weird schedule that I'll talk about at the end of the show this week. But at the end of the day, they win there. I really don't think you can keep them out. If you're going to put Notre Dame in this thing, which it looks like you are right now, I don't know how you can keep them out. So, frankly, I think if Notre Dame loses to Stanford, it might not be helpful for Miami, as weird as that sounds, because maybe they don't have the inclination then to put a 10-2 Miami in over a 10-2 Utah or a 10-2 Vanderbilt, whoever that may be. Regardless, you got to handle Pitt first, and we'll see what they do there. An incredible game for Miami and one that they badly needed in a big-time moment. A lot of hay to still put in the barn, that's for sure. Vanderbilt took care of business. They definitely got the message as well. They heard a lot of the noise that people were talking, just saying this is a sketchier spot than some people are saying, including myself. And Diego Pavia puts up 6 touchdowns, throws for 484 yards, and makes a very good argument that he should be in New York City at the end of the year, something that we can talk about after conference championships and all of that jazz. But at the end of the day, I think Vanderbilt is in a weird spot. A win this weekend does not guarantee a trip to the CFP the same way it would for other 10-2 SEC teams. It gives them a shot. There's no doubt about that. But they got to go to Knoxville. This is a very, very tough game. They're about to play. Diego Pavia is playing at a ridiculously high level. This team's been a different team on the road. So we'll see what happens in that football game. If they win it and they're 10-2 on the outside looking in, I don't know how mad you can be. I think you've done everything you can. If you're Vanderbilt, you're just in a weird position where there's going to be a lot of 10-2 teams right in that realm. You might just be lost in the shuffle at the end of the day. Texas was able to get a 52-37 win. They handled their business. A little bit of a sketchy first half, but defense kind of locks in for 25 minutes of the second half and kind of handles their business from there. Arch Manning is the story of this football game. Goes for 6 total touchdowns in it. Becomes the first SEC quarterback and the first SEC player since 2014 to catch, throw, and run for a touchdown in a game. An incredible game from the young kid, and he continues to grow as a player. Obviously, it's the Arkansas defense, so there's a lot more openings than there will be next week or this Friday when they face off against A&M, but kid's very talented, and he's starting to kind of come into his own. The offensive line changes have made a big difference for that football team, and now you just got to hope that you play spoiler. I really think you're pretty firmly out of the CFP given what happened this past weekend, but you can ruin a season for one of your rivals and then see where the chips fall on Selection Sunday. Michigan 45, Maryland 20. This is what the Michigan offense looks like when you don't give the ball away. It's that simple. This is a very, very talented group with guys like Andrew Marsh that they have not had at wide receiver in the past. The run game is always going to be comprehensive. That's not a question, no matter who is toting the rock. This time it was the third stringer that just found his way to make big-time plays in this football game. It's a talented group. There's no doubt about that. Let's be honest. Your work just started. Everyone knew after they lost that game to USC, everyone knew you had to win out the rest of the way to put yourself in a position to play an Ohio State team with a shot to go to the CFP. You got that. We'll talk about it more tomorrow. We'll talk about it on Wednesday. It's going to be special. It's a really, really interesting game. It's a game that I would consider to be a closer game going in than last season. And Michigan won last season. So I don't know what's going to happen. We'll break it down. I'll give my pick. I haven't decided which way I want to go yet, but I will give my pick soon enough on this channel. Michigan rolls over Maryland, and now you get to the game. Tennessee did it. Tennessee won a game down in Gainesville for the first time since 2003. They beat Florida 31-11, just totally dominated this team. Florida's just dead. I think they've been dead for a while now, but this is the official nail in the coffin. They get a Florida State team that at least you can keep out of a bowl game this weekend, if that's fun for you Florida fans at the end of the day. But Tennessee, I think you just got one too many times in the SEC. Obviously, if you beat Vanderbilt, you kind of ruin their season, which is plenty fun for you Vol fans. But definitely just one of those years. You go 9-3 in a year where I and many others were very worried about this team coming in. I think you have an incredible program with a great coaching staff, and this is a win that a lot of Tennessee fans were worried they wouldn't get. You were able to get it in pretty comfortable fashion. What a performance from Wisconsin, and what a last month from Wisconsin. They win 2 top 25 games in the last 3 weeks. In between, they played Indiana, so I don't think it was fair to assume they were going to win that one. And they got a big one against Minnesota this weekend. They're not making a bowl game. They're not doing anything special, and they could have easily quit. They didn't. They got a little bit of juice behind Luke Fickell, and they've taken it and run with it. I don't know what it means going forward. We'll see how that develops in 2026, but an incredible job from this Wisconsin team. Illinois got to feel like this one got away from him, this season got away from him. You lose to Indiana, you lose to Ohio State. That's one thing, that's totally fine. You had to win the toss-ups. You lose to Washington, now you get upset here, and that's kind of the world. In a mega conference, you are going to lose some of these games that you do not expect to lose. That's kind of the world we live in now, and Illinois kind of fell victim to it here. And TCU gets a massive upset over Houston, one that they badly needed after a very weird year in a number of ways. Houston probably feels like a special season kind of slipped through their fingers here. They lose a couple of games late after an incredible start, but 2 upsets put them firmly out of the mix for the Big 12. And at the end of the day, for the TCU team, I think you just got to feel like you never found even ground in this season. You start with an incredible offense and a questionable defense at best. You finish with an offense that continuously turns the football over, but a defense that stands up big in big moments. it's just weird. I don't know what to think about this team moving forward. I don't know what to think about Sonny Dykes and that program moving forward, but you got enough out of this game, that's for sure. And you knock Houston fully out of it, you give yourself a chance to salvage a frustrating season for sure. And then a couple other results from around the country. Arizona State rolls over Colorado 42-17. SMU just rolls Louisville in the first start for Deuce Adams. Incredibly young talent, but tough first game for him. 38-6 for SMU there. Penn State gets a 37-10 win. We'll talk more about Terry Smith in this next segment, but he's really rallied the troops over there, and it looks like the team that we kind of expected to start the season. LSU wins 13-10 over Western Kentucky. That is not a typo. I don't know what to think about that football team. Good news is you probably have a new coach maybe by Saturday, and we'll talk about that in the next segment. Over in the group of five, though, Tulane holds serve, wins 37-13 over Temple, kind of ends that group of five playoff curse that had been going on for the last couple of weeks. JMU escapes 24-20 over Washington State, one that they badly needed to stay in the hunt. Same thing with North Texas, 56-24 over Rice. How these teams are seeded in tomorrow's rankings, hopefully they're all ranked because they all deserve to be ranked. If they're all ranked, how they match up, especially JMU and North Texas, will tell us a lot about what the CFP could be down the stretch. It's going to be really interesting to watch this one unfold, and it's going down to the wire with these teams. But an incredible week of football. Obviously, the SEC taking their week off in a lot of respects dampened down the product just a little bit. I won't say it was a terrible weekend because any weekend with football on your TV is a great one. But at the end of the day, not quite as much stuff to talk about as some past weekends. But we got plenty of coaching carousel stuff to talk about. Right after this, we will get into Mike Norvell, Terry Smith, Lane Kiffin, all of the new things that are happening in the coaching realm. We'll talk about it all right after this, so stick with us. Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just did a little bit of a whip around to all the other big games of this past weekend. Notre Dame rolls over Syracuse. We get Miami and Vanderbilt and Utah all staying in the CFP mix. Texas probably falling out of it, even getting the win over Arkansas, and a couple other upsets from this past weekend. But we got to talk about coaching carousels. A lot of stuff has happened. A lot of stuff around Lane Kiffin, some stuff up there in State College. The biggest thing, however, happened down there in Tallahassee, Florida. Mike Norvell is sticking around at Florida State. He got the vote of confidence earlier in the year, and it sounded a whole lot like we're going to fire him at the end of the year. And now they're going to say they're going to roll with him for 2026. Frankly, this one is really simple in a lot of different ways. They can't afford it. They just can't afford it right now. It's $72 million plus to fire him and all of his assistants right now. They can't do it. Plain and simple. Here's the issue with that. The issues with this program cannot be fixed in an offseason. Plain and simple. The issues with this program go back to the start of Mike Norvell's tenure, and that's not to take anything away from Mike Norvell. I will talk about how much I like him here in a second, but at the end of the day, it can't be fixed. And going into 2026 doesn't mean you can't be good in 2026. You can bring in a great portal class. You can put together a nice team. You could take a step forward from 6 wins, 5 or 6 wins, whatever the season ends as, and you can move forward to 8, 9 wins next year. It won't fix what's wrong with this program. What's wrong with this program is they have not recruited the high school level or the high school kids to the level that they need to, while Miami has, while Florida has but hasn't gotten the results that they've needed. But at the end of the day, you're too far behind. It would take 3 or 4 years to build this thing the way that it's supposed to build a sustainable program. That's still what it takes to build a really sustainable program in this climate, even with the portal. I don't see any other way this ending than Florida State searching for a coach this time next year. I really don't. I'd love to say that Mike Norvell can turn this thing around, that he can put everything together this offseason, and that they can be a dangerous team next year, because Florida State's a really fun team when they're good. I don't see it being a reality. I really don't see a lot of players wanting to come there, given the circumstances that they're going into the season with. I don't see a lot of the coaches that they're going to try to get this offseason with some of the coaching changes that are inevitably going to be made. I don't see them wanting to come there because you're really asking them to move for the chance of a turnaround over there at Florida State. Worst case scenario, you're living there for a couple of months and then you got to up and move again. it's just not a great situation. It's really not. And if you watch that NC State game, it's really good proof of that. That was the ugliest finish to a football game I've seen in a very long time. I don't think he has that football team very much this season. He didn't have him last season towards the end of it. He doesn't have that fan base, I can promise you that. It's just a bad situation. And it's one that, in a lot of ways, if you want to be mad at anyone, you can be mad at the people that told you that he had a shot at the Alabama job, because that put you in a position where now it's $72 million instead of, I don't know what the number would have been, but let's say it was $20 million. If it's $20 million, he's walking out the door right now. That's the reality. But it's $72 million. You cannot afford it right now. I don't think it's a crazy decision to keep him around. I want to say that first and foremost. It's just a really tough position to be in. No matter how you cut it, no matter how you cut it, just a really, really tough position to be in. If you fire him, you're in a really bad position financially to go hire a new coach. If you don't fire him, everyone's just waiting around for that news to drop. I tend to be in that boat. I don't know when it's going to happen next year. I don't even know if it's going to happen next year. Maybe he pulls off an incredible portal class, they put together a great year, and they get rolling again. I think that is a uniquely slim chance of that happening. I think Mike Norvell is on borrowed time at this very moment. We'll see what happens in 2026. Maybe he can put together a portal class. Maybe he can get some elite coaches to come there. There's some massive maybes there, and I just really think I really think he will not make his way out of October next year. We'll see what happens with this one. We'll see what Florida State does. We'll see what he does in the offseason, but I can't feel confident in the situation over there at Florida State right now, and I think you're just biding time while you get the money together. So I'd love to say more for Florida State fans. I'd love to give you a better outlook. As of right now, it's pretty bleak, and I don't see it turning a corner very soon. We got to talk about Terry Smith. This is not a conversation I thought we'd be having, with all respect to Terry Smith. I think he's a great football coach, has done an incredible job with this team. Just thought this team was relatively dead at the time that James Franklin was fired, and going forward after a couple more losses, just did not feel great about where they were. They found it, and they look like the team that we thought they were going to be going into the season. Now, maybe not that elite, because they haven't played necessarily elite teams. They're playing really good football, and they're playing incredibly, incredibly hard, which means there's a groundswell for Terry Smith, a very, very connected guy in the world of Penn State, a guy that's been there for a very long time, a guy that's done a lot of really incredible things at that program. I think it'd be a terrible hire. And that's nothing against Terry Smith. I want that to be very, very clear. Actually, I'd love to be wrong. I'd love for them to hire Terry Smith and this thing to work out beautifully, because I think he's a fun guy. I think it'd be an interesting thing for this program, and I think it'd be something really, really fun to watch. But you're going to look me in the face and say you're going to fire James Franklin and then hire James Franklin's assistant to be the head coach. I can't believe that's going to be the case. I just can't. I get it. A lot of fans are calling for it. Some former players are calling for it. Current players are calling for it. I get all of that. I just think it would be a massive mistake. I just don't think that would be something that would work out long term. I could be very well wrong. Who knows? And frankly, when you look around the coaching search right now for Penn State, I think outside of this one, you're probably going towards Bob Chesney. So that's up to y'all. Depending on the way you want to go with that, I think Terry Smith can do good things there. I have a hard time believing he's going to be better than James Franklin, and that's what you're going for. I think it's going to be Bob Chesney. I think they're going to end up hiring someone different. I think they're going to go with Bob Chesney. That being said, they win this weekend. Who knows what happens? He has a lot of people in his ear. Does Pat Kraft saying this is the guy? A lot of different people, alumni and former players, saying they would support this team if he was the head coach. I don't know what's going to happen. I do think they'll have a hire soon. The situation with Bob Chesney, if he goes to the playoff, could be a little bit sketchy. Terry Smith has a shot, is really the long and short of this. He has a shot to get this head coaching job. If I were the AD, I probably would not be hiring Terry Smith. That's just a personal belief on getting caught up in interim coaches a little bit too quickly and not thinking about the long term. Who knows? Maybe I'm entirely wrong, and I kind of hope I am, because it'd be an incredible story to see Terry Smith take over this program and do incredible things. I have massive questions that a James Franklin assistant is going to be able to do more than James Franklin was capable of doing. We'll see what happens. If it's not him, I do think it's going to be Bob Chesney, and we'll see how that unfolds. I think it's going to happen here pretty soon. and we'll see if Terry Smith ends up getting it. The Lane Kiffin update, something that is going to happen, it seems, until Saturday. Saturday seems to be the cutoff point. Keith Carter came out and said the decision will be made by Saturday after the Egg Bowl has ended. That reads to me and a lot of other people that they're just delaying the announcement of him leaving. That being said, a lot of different reports about this and a lot of different people saying he has no idea. He has not made a decision. And that sounds crazy to me. But I don't necessarily think it's all that untrue. I think all the salaries seem to be relatively in line. It sounds like they're all around 13, 14, would probably make him the highest paid coach in college football. All of them seem to be right in that realm. Now, can Ole Miss hang with Florida or LSU when it comes to NIL? It seems like they can, given over the last couple of years. Are they willing to do all of that at once is a big-time question. And we'll see how all of that unfolds. It's just a very weird situation, especially going into a game that I would pick Ole Miss to win today, and we'll pick that game later in the week. I'm probably going to pick Ole Miss. But if they fall to Mississippi State on Friday, and then Lane Kiffin announces he's going to LSU on Saturday, I don't think Ole Miss is making the playoff. And I don't necessarily think it would be fair to kick them out of the playoff, but we've seen it before. We've seen them hurt a team because a very important part of that football team was not a part of it anymore with Florida State a couple of years ago. I wouldn't be shocked. Now, I think you're going to beat Mississippi State, so I don't think it's going to be a huge problem, but then you beat Mississippi State. If he comes out the next day and says he's going to LSU, who's your coach for the playoff? Is it him? I'd be shocked. I definitely wouldn't let him if I was Keith Carter, but at the end of the day, who knows? It just really sucks for Ole Miss fans. That's one thing that I can say very confidently. I don't know what he does. I really don't. I think all three teams are still pretty firmly in it. I do think if Ole Miss falls on Friday, I think their CFP hopes lie on this decision. As crazy as that sounds, I really do think that's a reality that Ole Miss fans are going to have to come a little bit accustomed to. Now, you don't want to become accustomed to Mississippi State beating you, so at the end of the day, let's just assume you win. You're in the playoff regardless. I don't know where your coach is going, and I'm not sure he does either, which is a crazy thing to say this deep in a season and this close to the Egg Bowl, but that's where we are. We'll see if something happens on that Saturday. We'll see if something happens before that. We'll see if this thing drags out one way or another. I'm still going to bet that Lane Kiffin is somewhere other than Ole Miss. Right now, I'd bet on LSU. It is very much up in the air, and I think it changes by the day. So we'll see what happens. I could very well see him saying, I'm going to stick around. I could also see him saying, I'm going to leave, and then they have Pete Golding as their head coach going into the playoff games. Just a very, very weird situation over there in Oxford, but it sounds like we're getting a conclusion towards the end of this week, one way or another. It sounds like Auburn has zeroed in on their guy, and it's John Summerall at Tulane. I don't think this was much of a mystery for a lot of people. He was the head coach at Troy, spent a lot of his time growing up in the Huntsville-Madison area of Alabama. Very, very talented coach, a guy that would be at the top of my list, that's for sure, along with Matt Campbell and a couple other guys. But at the end of the day, he's been the runaway favorite for a long time. The question is just when can this be handled more than if. I really do think he will be the next head coach at Auburn. The question is Tulane playing in a playoff this upcoming month? Is he a guy that is going to be coaching going forward in that playoff? I have to assume he will stick with that team if they go to the playoff. I think it's a different situation than what's going on over there at Ole Miss. But at the end of the day, I think this is going to be the next Auburn head coach. I think John Summerall will take that job. If he doesn't, I think they have a couple other options set up. It's hard to know how great those are comparatively to John Summerall, but at the end of the day, I really do think it's going to be him. It's just a timing thing, depending on are they going to the playoff, are they not, when can he sign a contract, all of that stuff that is a little bit over my head. I won't lie with you, but at the end of the day, I do think John Summerall is going to be the next head guy at Auburn. I think it's just a matter of when. And we got a firing. We got a new coaching position on the carousel now. There's a little bit of a mouthful. Cal has fired Justin Wilcox from their program. Nick Rolovich takes over as the head guy over there at Cal, at least interim for the time being. A very weird finish to his time at Washington State. If you want to look up that, you're more than welcome to. A very weird finish. Brian Harson's right next to him. A very weird finish to his time at Auburn. So it'll be a weird thing to watch. At the end of the day, they only got one more game, and it'll be an interesting coaching search. There's no doubt about that. I tend to believe the odds-on favorite right this second is Tosh Lupoy, the defensive coordinator over there at Oregon. He's an alum of Cal, and a big thing here is Jaren Kiave-Sagapulotele. He's a very talented quarterback. You want to keep him in-house. Tosh Lupoy has that connection. He came from Oregon in the portal about 2 weeks after being there, but he does have that connection with Tosh Lupoy. I have to imagine a lot of offensive assistants that do know JKS would come over with him if you were to take that job. I think that's the slam dunk one, especially if you want to keep that quarterback there. Other than that, you got Sean Lewis, would be a great hire from San Diego State. Ryan Grubb from Alabama, if he's ready to take that head coaching job. Maybe Jim Mora from UConn is another option. A couple other guys that will absolutely pop up in this conversation. For me, I'm calling Tosh Lupoy immediately. I think he's done an incredible job with that Oregon program, is a really, really top-level recruiter, and gives you a shot to keep that quarterback around, which is really what you need moving forward. If you're going to be successful at Cal, you need to keep JKS in the building. I think Tosh Lupoy would do that. So I tend to believe that's going to be your hire. How quickly that's made, again, playoff for Oregon, all of that stuff, that will play into this, and we'll see how all of that develops. But Justin Wilcox out. We'll see what Brian Harsin and Nick Rolovich have for this weekend. But at the end of the day, I do believe it'll be likely Tosh Lupoy. At the very least, that's what I would do if I was the making the decision over there at Cal. Obviously, I'm not. So we'll see what happens the rest of the way. We're just getting started. We got a couple that are going to get filled here pretty shortly. We'll see if LSU or Florida gets filled by Lane Kiffin. Tend to believe the other one will be filled pretty quickly after that, once Lane Kiffin has made that decision. And then you got all the other ones. Then you got Auburn, who I think is closing in on their guy in John Summerall. You got Florida still to close. Penn State, will they hire Terry Smith? Will they move on to someone else? If it is, I think it's going to be Bob Chesney. Then you got UCLA. Do they get Bob Chesney before Penn? There's a lot of stuff that's going to happen. I'll leave it at that for the time being. I will stop kind of do word vomiting there. But at the end of the day, a lot of things to happen the rest of the way. At the very least, we know Florida State will not be in this conversation for now. I tend to believe they will be this time next year, but that's something we can deal with when it does happen. But that'll do it for this edition of Just Another College Football Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really does help me out. Please do like, subscribe, comment. It means the world to me. Want to build something kind of special here, so please do all those things and keep it rolling. We have a little bit of a different schedule here. Obviously, with Thanksgiving this Thursday, I'm going to be back here tomorrow. I'm going to be back here tomorrow to make a lot of picks. I'm going to be back on Wednesday to break down all of the conference championship realities, all the conference championship ways that can go, the CFP implications as we head into the final weekend. All of that stuff is coming over the next couple of days, but we'll be back tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow to make a number of big-time picks for a loaded rivalry weekend. We have a crazy Friday. We have an awesome Saturday. And it's going to change a lot in the world of college football going forward. Could create all-out chaos. And I have to believe some of that is going to come for us. We'll break it down tomorrow. We'll give a lot of picks tomorrow, a lot of different stuff. And then on Wednesday, we'll go through as much chaos as we possibly can before those games kick off on Friday. But thank you so much for tuning in. Please do like, subscribe, comment. It means the world to me. Helps me out a ton. But thank you so much for tuning in. And I'll see you guys tomorrow to make some big-time picks for rivalry weekend.